Okay, hello. My name is Kate. Welcome back to my channel. And today I just wanted to do a sort of live battle of the book style overview, I guess, of all of the books that I read in 2024 that I deeply loved, but that will not be making my best of 2024. I have already done my worst of 2024, so let me know what you think so far. And hopefully today will be a little less painful than that one was, since this will be largely positive feelings. And I'm going to slide the comments to this screen. So if you see me looking to the side, it's just so I can do both here. And let's see. Hi, Kristen. Okay, so I don't know of a better way to do this. Well, I might investigate as I do more live shows here, but I'm just using Canva to do my Battle of the Books rankings here. I did randomize these pairings, so that's why some of them are going to be slightly unhinged and not really make any sense, but I'm just going to roll with it, and it's going to be whatever it's going to be. I am also going to try and keep my chatting to a smaller level than I frequently do, but we'll just go ahead and get started on the rankings here. How come? Let's see. There we go. That's what I wanted. So I'll zoom in a little bit here so we can actually see these titles. Okay, so the first one is A Lady for a Duke by Alexis Hall and An Ornithologist's Field Guide to Love by India Holton. Conveniently, these are both historical romance. The India Holton does have some fantasy in it, but it's mostly limited to the magical creatures. So A Lady for a Duke is a friends to lovers historical romance Napoleonic era. And it features a trans main character, and thankfully the conflict is not about her identity. It's basically them coming back together after everyone thought she was dead. It's super sweet, a little bit on the long side for historical romance, but just absolutely adorable. And then Ornithologist is a super over-the-top madcap. Two rival ornithologists are competing to be the ones to find this rare bird because I think it gets them tenure or something like that. It is full of tropes. It knows exactly what it's doing and making fun of like genre like standards. So it is super fun. I made this really hard on myself because I think all of these are like 4.5, 5 stars, and no exception here. I think I have to go with Lady for a Duke, though, only because it was really fun to see more queer representation and especially trans representation in historical romance, because I definitely don't feel like we get to see that very often. And I just really love Alexis Hall's writing. Just really talented and definitely made me cry in parts on that one. And it has the opposite of toxic masculinity, which was super sweet to see. So highly recommend. Serpent and the Wings of Night versus yeah, it was so cute. I loved it so much. Serpent and the Wings of Night and The Man Who Died Twice. That just feels like the weirdest pairing ever. I already know I said I randomized this, but you can definitely tell. So, God, I don't know. I feel like, okay, so I should give quick little blurbs. Serpent and the Wings of Night, everybody knows what that is. It's a super popular romantasy, vampires competition. I had a good time with it. I think my gripe about Serpent is that I don't really like the main character that much. She's kind of the really popular stabby female main character, and I liked the love interest more than I liked her. I loved the competition. The competition was super fun, but I know, Cassidy. Right as I'm saying, I don't like her too. So that's sorry. You only came for the pain, so that's my bad. Um, I still really liked it. I still gave it 4.5 stars, and I'm interested to see what happens with the sequel, which I haven't gotten to yet, but plan to this year. So we'll see. Man Who Died Twice is the second in the Thursday Murder Club. It's cozy murder mystery with some senior citizens essentially in the UK. Super fun. This one deals with more like spy intrigue than the previous one, which was very fun. I think I probably have to go with The Man Who Died Twice only because I love the characters a ton in that one. And I love them a bit more than I love the characters in Serpent. Even though the banter in both is excellent. Then we have Ancillary Justice and House of Roots and Ruin. Okay, so Ancillary Justice is sci-fi space opera. The main character is a ship that can also inhabit bodies and ends up getting involved in a revolution. I really liked it. The writing style takes a little bit of getting used to because all genders are represented as she, which is something obviously purposefully done by Ann Leckie. And the writing style is a little more dense and kind of harder to get used to. And I think the problem is I read this after I read Tykes Kalan by Arkady Martine, which I think handles a lot of the same subjects, but I like the way it handles it better. So still really good, just not an all-time fave. And then House of Roots and Ruin was a surprise. Other than one surprise that's going to show up on my best of the year list, it was the bigger surprise for me this year because I did not love the first book. This is the second book in a YA sort of gothic horror romance series that's got some fantasy sort of Gods Among Us type trope. And the first one kind of felt a little too tropey and cliche to me. But this one was wild, especially in the second half. The amount of twists in the second half of that story, or the main character basically has to go paint a portrait at this creepy, semi possibly haunted mansion. that book was wild. And I probably would not have continued this series if Kristen and Alba had not convinced me that I needed to give it a shot. God, I don't know. That's so hard. I feel like this is wild, but I think I'm going to give it to House of Roots and Ruin just because it surprised me so much. And I had such a fun time. Like, I guess some of the twists at the end, but certainly not all of them. And it leaves off on such a cliffhanger. Like, I love Ancillary Justice, but House of Roots and Ruin was a surprise. Okay. Yeah, I figured you would. Honestly, I'm surprised at myself picking that one over Ancillary, but it was just so much fun. And then, oh God, that's the worst pairing. Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin and Empire of Shadows by Jacqueline Benson. So Fifth Season is, I guess I would call it sci-fantasy. Really hyped, and I think it deserves the hype. follows some characters who have the ability to manipulate earth magic, but are living in a system that is very oppressive and under which they're very much under control until things start going sideways. And there's a couple different POVs, but one of them is a mom whose daughter has been kidnapped, and is basically trying to get back to her. And I respect the craft of fifth season a lot. I think the way that Jemison wove in the different points of view and the way she handled the plotting for that was really impressive. I just wish I had connected to the characters more. Because of the way she set it up, there's a sort of distance from the characters for me that made it a 4 or 4.5 star instead of a 5 star, even though I can intellectually see how brilliant it is as a story. And then Empire of Shadows. Yeah, it's really well written. It's just not really character driven necessarily. Empire of Shadows is the closest thing I've ever found to The Mummy in terms of that dynamic between Rick and Evie. It's historical fiction adventure with the teensiest bit of fantasy. There's an element, like a magical artifact the main character finds that makes it sort of fantasy, but it's mostly historical fiction. So go in expecting that for sure. But the banter between the main character, who's a suffragette, who ends up getting fired, essentially for protesting the treatment of women in London, I think Victorian time period, if I remember right, and takes this magical artifact she finds at work and basically goes on an expedition herself because she knows it won't be authorized. It's super fun. Lots of great social commentary, lots of great banter. Again, closest thing I've ever found to The Mummy. These are so wildly different. It feels crazy to compare them. And I know this is a hot take, but I think I'm going to go with Empire of Shadows. Just because I loved the characters and I have deep respect for anybody who can bring up these historical events that most people don't know about Latin American history and have a really fun adventure that also brings up the problems with colonialism. So it was really well done. I feel bad putting that over fifth season because fifth season is incredible, but I'm kind of hoping that the sequels to fifth season will give me some of that character connection that I kind of need to really love a story. Hey, Chelsea. And Bridget. I am roughly halfway through here. Well, I guess halfway through the first round of these. Okay, an easier decision, kind of. Sorcery and Small Magics by Micah Ducey and The Secret Service of Tea and Treason, again by India Holton. I'm only including 2 India Holtons because these are technically different series. So it's a little bit of a cheat to have both on here, but I don't care. So Sorcery and Small Magics is just an adorable light academia, male romance that has 2 rival academics that end up getting cursed together. And so they have to work together to break this curse. And it's just the slow burn, and the really interesting magic system that it uses, where you have one person who is a scribe who can write the spells, and the other person is, I don't remember what term they use for it, but essentially can cast the spell. I really liked that. I really liked a little bit of the commentary on whether or not the magic school that they both go to is really the best solution for the various magic situations that they run into. And again, just the slow burn between them was gold. I absolutely loved it. And one of the main characters is very prim and proper. And then the other one is just a chaotic mess. And I adored him so much. I love chaotic messes, I got to admit. And then Secret Service of Teen Treason is the third book in India Holton's Dangerous Damsels series, which, if you've heard me talk about it before, is the lady pirate sort of madcap historical romance series, which again has a little bit of fantasy in it, but not a ton, other than the flying houses. And here you have a maid and a butler who are actually Secret Service agents who have to infiltrate one of the pirate houses because they're threatening to kill the queen. Essentially, it's the plot line. And it's both very silly, but also has fantastic, like, sort of autism spectrum rep. It's not like called out specifically, but there's definitely characteristics for the female main character that would lead you that way. But the amount that they support each other as the romance develops is just so endearing, but it's also hilarious. Just a super, super funny, sweet adventure. Highly recommend both of these. And it's kind of hard to choose between them. God. I think I have to go with Secret Service just because it's so fun to see a relationship dynamic where they're just, like, initially they're sort of rivals, and then pretty quickly are super supportive of each other when one of them gets overwhelmed by all the people they have to deal with, all these crazy pirates. The other kind of steps in, and it's a great partnership. So I really loved that one. Then we have Fire Logic by Laurie J. Marks, which I picked up because of Alba. So Alba gets full credit for this being here. And originally, this was actually in my top 10. I just had some absolute amazing books in December. And then wildly, Crooked Kingdom is here instead of by Leigh Bardugo, instead of in my top 10, which again, I did not expect that to happen. Fire Logic is a little more, I don't want to say dense, but more philosophical, a little more distant of a perspective fantasy that deals a lot, again, with oppression and colonialism. The main character essentially survives as the last person left of her people and has to navigate this world where there's constant warfare, and a lot of one of the countries is reduced to guerrilla warfare, and it really gets into the struggles of that and is one of the more interesting depictions I've seen in fantasy of a complicated situation like that. And then Crooked Kingdom is the second book in the Six of Crows duology for anybody who's either read that or watched the Shadow and Bone TV show. And this is another, I mean, they're all going to be challenging because they're all things I really enjoyed. These are very different fantasies. Crooked Kingdom is more heist focused, very character driven. I really loved the characters in this even more than in Six of Crows. But Fire Logic has some of the best sort of social commentary, philosophical discussions I've seen without it being soapboxy. God, I don't know. Okay. Like I did with fifth season, I'm going to pick the characters. And the characters in Crooked Kingdom were just amazing. I kind of felt like Six of Crows wasn't as character driven as I wanted it to be, but Crooked Kingdom fixed all of that and was amazing. So it'll be that one. Then we have What Feasts at Night by T. Kingfisher, which is the second book in the Sworn Soldier novella series that started with What Moves the Dead, which was fantastic. What Feasts at Night is not quite as good, It's still very good, and it follows the same character, Easton, who ends up back in their home country and is dealing with folk horror that's kind of, I think it's dream related, if I remember right. I read this very early in the year, so some of the details have faded. But what I remember standing out to me about What Feasts at Night is the representation of war trauma and PTSD is just spectacular. It's so well done. I don't know that anybody else besides T. Kingfisher could have made such a relatable set of characters, but also dealt with such a topic as well as she did. It was just amazing. And then, wildly different, is The Adventures of Amina al-Sarafi by Shannon Chakraborty. And I have to admit, and I know this is heresy, but I DNF'd the Devabad series by Chakraborty. I just couldn't get into it. So I went in to Amina with pretty low expectations. This is set, I think, in the Middle East. I can't remember if it's the Indian Ocean or if it's a different ocean. But she's a pirate who has gotten out of the pirate life, and essentially this is sort of medieval time period, and has had a daughter, basically removed herself from sort of the chaos and the sinfulness of that life and made a new life for herself, and essentially gets blackmailed into going on one last adventure, getting the whole crew back together again. I know. It was just too Devabad just was a little too YA for me in the first book, and I didn't think I would enjoy it. So I stopped reading the first one, even though like the historical details amazing, the fantasy elements amazing, but the interaction between the main character and the Jinn character she summons were just like so tropey in a way I couldn't get along with. Yeah. I kept all three of those books because the covers are so gorgeous, and then I finally just had to admit that I don't know when I'm going to get around to trying Devabad again, if ever. So I've just unhauled them. Yeah, I liked Amina a lot better. I understand the complaints from people who love Devabad about Amina, because it is found family, but they're already established. So it's not like you get to see them become a found family together. And it's so much more historical and sort of talk to the reader, like fourth wall breaking. The audiobook, amazing. So well done. Because they have like fun effects for it in terms of how Amina is talking to the reader. Just loved it. Yeah. Like I said, I understand people that don't like it. But for me, it was so much more my style of book than Devabad was. And I just loved Amina as a character. So I think, again, I have to go with Amina because there's so little about that time period, I feel like, that people know generally. And it was really fun to see her play around with that. And I just adored Amina as a character. The humor, I don't have kids, but she felt relatable. So it was very fun. I absolutely adored that. Okay, last initial pairing, another semi-unhinged pairing, and that's Black Sheep by Rachel Harrison, which, again, another one that was such a shock for me. Absolutely loved it. And I'll backtrack myself a little bit because I want to point this out. Yes, absolutely. Middle-aged fantasy woman character. I feel like we need more of them. I really, really liked it. 10,000. Oh, so I don't know if I said what Black Sheep was about. I inhaled this in like 24 hours. I had never read Rachel Harrison, and I wasn't sure how I'd feel about pink horror, where you have horror that's really focused on like women's issues, female friendships, relationships, stuff like that. Hopefully, that's not the worst description of pink horror ever, but that's my understanding. Um, and this one follows a main character that essentially has been invited to the wedding of her former best friend. She has left this cult that her best friend and her family was all involved in. And so she has to go back for this wedding, but she doesn't really know what she's walking into. And it gets crazy. I have since read So Thirsty, Harrison's newest one, and I did not really enjoy it. So I kind of am starting to wonder if Black Sheep is the standout, but I'll probably try a couple others from her before I decide that that's it for me. Yeah, it's very fun. I liked it a lot, but you have to be okay with it getting pretty unhinged. But it was very fun. 10,000 Stitches is by Olivia Atwater. This is the second book in her Regency Fairy Tales series, which is easiest to describe as sort of like Bridgerton meets Fae. It's very, the previous book is more focused on balls. 10,000 Stitch, like balls as in dancing. But 10,000 Stitches follows a main character who is actually a servant in a noble household, and she's fallen in love with one of the lords that lives in the household. So she basically makes a deal with a Fey lord to be able to get this dude to fall in love with her. And then you kind of see where it goes from there. And oh man, I loved it so much. I love Olivia Atwater. The commentary she has about classism in this, the way she represents Faye is very capricious, and like the Fae Lord in this does not understand people at all. He thinks he does in parts, but he's always making these mistakes where his mind doesn't work quite the same way as people's do. So it was very funny. It was very touching. Again, I really liked sort of the themes that Atwater wove into what is basically historical romance with a little bit of fae. Or I guess a lot of fae, but a little bit of magic. It was really, really good. And I think I have to give it to 10,000 Stitches, even though I had a fantastic time with Black Sheep, but more of the themes and the characters stick with me with 10,000 Stitches, so it's just slightly better for me. Okay, so let me zoom out a little bit here so we can see these guys. Okay, Lady for a Duke or The Man Who Died Twice. That's difficult. I think, though, because I'm a romantic at heart, I'm going to pick A Lady for a Duke. Like I said, I just love the trans rep in this. I really love Hall's like humor and the way they handle relationships, just the way they navigate having known each other in the past. And like it just sort of the initial conflict gives way to them being very supportive and trying to navigate what they mean to each other now. Just really, really cute and well done. Yeah, thanks for joining me. House of Roots and Ruin and Empire of Shadows. Oof. That's so hard because I love The Mummy. So that representation was amazing. I've never read anything that gets close except for that. But this was so fun and unhinged and just wild. That this is even a contest after how much I didn't like the first book House of Salt and Sorrows is crazy to me. Just the turnaround was just okay. I have to. It was such a surprise, like a very pleasant surprise, but it was just so fun. I guess you can just get me if you put enough fun twists and crazy stuff in your book. Oh boy. Secret Service or Crooked Kingdom. Right? I know, but it was just when you can surprise me like that, I kind of got to give you props for that. Okay. All right. I have to give it to Crooked Kingdom just because the amount that I cared about those characters was absurd. I loved all of them, not just like, I mean, obviously Kaz and Inej were amazing, but like Jesper and Wylan, so cute. I just absolutely loved it. I will admit that I still only came to feeling lukewarm about Matthias. But the fact that I went to lukewarm instead of I want to boot him off a cliff is impressive. And then Amina and 10,000 Stitches. I love Amina, but I think it has to be 10,000 Stitches. I think so. I don't remember if it was last year, the year before. I read Half a Soul, which is the first book in this series, and I didn't actually like it the first time. I didn't like the ending. I loved everything up to that, but didn't like the ending. And then I have read nearly everything Atwater's written except for Small Miracles now, and she's like a all-time favorite, can do no wrong author for me. So I feel like she has to win that one. Okay. This is a little easier for me now because obviously it's going to be a Lady for a Duke. I really, again, was pleasantly surprised by House of Roots and Ruin, but Lady for a Duke was just adorable. 10,000 Stitches or Crooked Kingdom. Oh boy. All right, it's Crooked Kingdom. Just like Crooked Kingdom and Six of Crows made me realize how much I love heist stories and like sort of like the found family gang, which I always said I wasn't into, but Six of Crows changed my mind on that, and then other things like Jade City have only further confirmed that. Okay, Lady for a Duke or Crooked Kingdom. That is a very difficult decision. I love the characters in both of those so much. Excuse me. God, I don't know. That's so hard. I feel like on a different day, my answer would be different between these two. Okay. I think I'm going to give it to Lady for a Duke as my favorite honorable mention, just because I'm a sucker for historical romance. I've been reading historical romance since I was a teenager, and it's just so satisfying to see queer rep and great relationships and great historical detail. Just chef's kiss. Alexis Hall is a new favorite author for sure. Yeah, I've been blown away by Alexis Hall this year. There was one miss, I will say. I tried Mortal Follies and I didn't love it. However, I'll still pick up literally anything Hall writes. It's just so good. Okay, so I am done. That was my tier ranking of honorable mentions. and I managed to do it in less than an hour. So I'm pretty proud of myself for not being too chatty. Let me know if you have any thoughts on what I ended up picking. Thank you for joining me. It's so much fun for me to be able to chat and do these live shows where I get to rank things. Yeah, thank you. It was a little bit stressful to do this live, but hopefully it was entertaining for you guys. And I will be doing, like I said, live tier rankings for my wrap ups. I'll probably try and throw in more live shows just because I enjoy doing this kind of thing. But yeah, I think that is all for me. I hope you guys have a great night, and I will see you in future videos. Bye.